It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague, whose 2020 political slogan is Dutton 2020. Why do I leave so many effing tabs open in my browser? It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 open at the moment, and I'm not even doing anything.
You're a psycho. For those who aren't aware, this was your presidential slogan: is your last name plus 2020 plus the last thing you said out loud. Mine was Mannering 2020. Get the fuck out! I'm on the phone. Which
is better than get the fuck out! I'm on the bog.
True.
I should straight off the gate apologise. I was a guest on the Gridiron Gentleman's podcast this week, where I refer to myself as 75% of the Waxing Lyrical podcast.
I'm looking for a lie. Can't really see one. The irony of you being on the Gentleman's podcast is not lost on me. But yeah, there you go. Such is life. How were they?
It was excellent, very, very amusing time. It was part 1 of their podcast, and I was on with them for an hour and a half.
Some guy, they go to the Matt Kelly School of Podcast. Like, this is, I've just seen it. I don't know if you listen to Binge Mode podcasts who've done Harry Potter. They've done
Star Wars.
Thrones, they've done Star Wars. They're now doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything around it. Like, I ain't got time for this. There's too many podcasts as it is. I need my podcast short and sharp.
Yeah.
And ours isn't very rarely like that.
Yeah, the Winston Wolfe, isn't it? You know, if I talk fast, you've got to act fast. That's everything. You know.
Yeah. And on that note, we're gonna start the show. We're gonna plug into the mains first. We're gonna find out and see if we believe that certain teams can win their division. Then Dutton's got a fancy darling, no fancy loser this week because everyone's a winner. And then we're going to wrap it up with our daily fantasy teams of the week. And Neil can gloat later on that he actually won a DraftKings contest. Go Neil. Right, let's get this party started. Let us plug into the mains and see what teams can win a division. 6 weeks in, Dutton, and there's a few teams that are in places that we didn't believe they would be in. And the question is now, as you know, a third of the way through, can they get to a division title and a playoff berth? I have 5 teams in a division to focus on if they can win, because I'm pretty sure we'll get to the last one, and I'm not sure any team can win it.
Or wants to.
Well, I absolutely know one team definitely doesn't want to, given the final play they did on Sunday. Bravo to them, by the way. I endorse their terrible play calling. But let's not talk about that first. Let's start in the NFC North. And the question on everyone's lips: can the 5-1 Chicago Bears win the NFC North?
Yes, they can, because if there's one thing the Chicago Bears have shown throughout the entirety of their history, when their defense is strong, the Chicago Bears are strong. It doesn't matter what clown is at quarterback, the defense will paper over all the cracks. Now, people need to stop with this. They're the poorest 5-1 team in history, because, as I said, that's a bit like saying you're the poorest billionaire I've ever met. Yeah, I'm still a billionaire, though, aren't I? You're the worst 5-1 in history, but I am 5-1. Be gone with you. It's ridiculous. It doesn't matter. As Parcells said, you are what your record is. They're a 5-1 team. Now, granted, every game they've played probably could have gone the other way. Crimea River, they're 5-1. We've already seen what happened against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They beat the Bucs. Might have been questionable here and there. The Bucs then went and beat the living piss out of Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. So we've seen straight away there that the out of division might not be the big issue for the Bears, because defense seems to travel, and their defense is making enough plays that they are going to be a force in this, I don't want to say competitive division, but suddenly much more wide open division than it was a couple of weeks ago.
I think on the Bears, but first of all, the Bears went 13-3 with Rex Grossman, and I believe was 7-1. So if you're wondering if it's feasible to do this with a garbage quarterback, there you go. Nick Foles is 100 times better than Rex Grossman ever was. To be fair, Mitchell Trubisky is probably 100 times better than Rex Grossman ever was. They have been in tight games. They could have lost them all, but they didn't. They won them, and that should be seen as a good thing. I think my thoughts on whether they could win this division or not changed dramatically on Sunday. I thought they were in a prime place to lose against the Carolina Panthers, and they did not. And did you watch Green Bay, Tampa Bay?
Yes, most of it. Yeah.
Did you? So the first 10 minutes of the game, did you think that the Green Bay Packers were going to win 45-0?
Yeah, it looked like Aaron Rodgers had turned up, slapped his wang on the table, and said, "You'll do whatever I say."
The problem is then, Neil, and Dominican Sue got his wang, chopped it off, cooked it, and ate it. That did remind me how much that I know everyone hates him, but I secretly love, and it's not a secret, and Dominican Sue. Because the last two plays of that half, where he commits a penalty by pushing Rodgers over, starts giving it loads, and then causes mayhem in the next play, and continues to jar at Rodgers going into the half, is one of the greatest things ever. The Packers were shocking after those first 10 minutes of the game, and I think that calls into question how good their offense actually is, and based on that, we have a question of, can it sustain? Issues for the Bears, difficult games, I guess. They've got at the Titans, at the Rams, at the Packers. The rest of it, though, not tremendously bad. They play the Saints, who aren't great. They play Minnesota twice, who are disgustingly bad. The Texans, the Lions, the Jags. It's not the hardest schedule in the world, and they're already 5-1. You need 5 more wins for 10, really, and that could be a division win.
Yeah, I think so. They have set themselves, because as we know, defense becomes more important the deeper into the season you go. If your defense is firing now, then you're off to a flyer. The big issue we've got is that offensively they are limited, as it's Nick Foles basically pulling plays out of his arse, getting away with some plays. They can't lean on a ground game because David Montgomery is just not up to it. But all the offense has to do is do no harm, and they'll be fine.
Moving over to the AFC North division, given how the games have gone in recent weeks and how other teams are playing, can the Pittsburgh Steelers win the AFC North?
The big issue for the Steelers will be how big of a loss Devin Bush.
Yes.
Devin White is at the Buccaneers. I always get them mixed up.
Yeah,
how big a loss he will actually be, because he's been exceptional. He is the cog, a vital cog of their defense. We know that if you have fast linebackers, you have a fast defense, and they're a very fast defense because they have fast linebackers. Anyone who comes in after him is going to be a downgrade. They have weapons on offense, but they're not featuring anyone on offense. It seems to be everyone's taking a turn. It's almost like Mike Leach is the coach in Pittsburgh. That he's going to spread it round. Obviously they have shown that they can beat the bad teams, which is what they're supposed to. My worry is that if a team doesn't accept that they're bad and starts hitting them back in the mouth, how will they respond? Because the Eagles pushed them all the way. It was just the fact that the Eagles couldn't stop them on third downs. But, a couple of plays here and there, and the Eagles could have won that game. And to be fair, the Eagles could have done exactly the same to the Ravens the week after. Teams like the Steelers, teams like the Steelers, if you want to get that number 1 seed and therefore get the bye, you need to be putting the trash out. And I just worry that we know the Steelers are going to have a game or two where they don't.
Next 2 weeks define the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers, at the Titans, at the Ravens. Basically, in theory, I guess with the exception of the Kansas City Chiefs, that kind of round robin will define who's the best team in the AFC, right? If Tennessee beat Pittsburgh and then say Pittsburgh beat Baltimore, then you're like, ooh, Tennessee. Do you know that kind of idea? And I think it can kind of get like that. Can this team win the division? Yes, because although they played 2 of them, they play the NFC East. They've still got 2 more of them to play. Washington and Dallas both stink. They do have tough games though. They are at Buffalo, as I said, at Baltimore, at Tennessee. So it won't be easy, but I do think this team can win a division. It's a strange team now because I think when they were good, you used to having pinpoint players to go to, And this season, you expected it to be Connor and Schuster, and although Connor has had 300-yard games, it's not been spectacular. And Schuster's on milk cartons, that's not happening. It just isn't. So, and my fantasy team is paying the price for it. But
no one cares.
No one cares. Do you know what people should care about, Neil? The Miami freaking Dolphins. That's who people should be caring about. Not only is this team 3-3, 1-2, two games against the 49ers and a college team called the New York Jets. But they've just turned their franchise over to their franchise player, Tua Tagovailoa. Can this team finish ahead of the Bills and the Patriots?
Miami made Ryan Fitzpatrick sad. Me not like Miami anymore.
I don't think they did make Ryan Fitzpatrick sad. That's the interesting thing, right? Ryan knew what he was signing up for. Fully immersed in the idea that, in theory, he was in for the injured Tua Tagovailoa, and as soon as Tua was back fit, he was going to play. Tua had 2 plays against the Jets. Everything was right with the world. Thanks, Ryan, and your amazing beard. Go and sun it up in Miami Beach for a while.
As I've said to many people, this week, the inevitable 6 interception game is always around the corner with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Yeah. So better to get that out of your life and not have to worry about it. In answer to the original question, though, yes, they can, because the Bills are wobbling. To use Rocky parlance, the Bills are cut.
Yeah.
There is blood in the water here, to keep mixing my metaphors and my film quotes. So it's a question of, do we see Buffalo get back on the horse? I'm just going to keep going with the cliches and metaphors and similes and what here. Can they lift and go back to what they were doing? The Patriots are struggling, and they're struggling on offense, and defensively it looks as if they're not quite able to mask their offense the way the Bears are able to mask theirs. But the last time I checked, Bill Belichick is still the head coach of the Patriots. So do not count them out. But the Dolphins have shown... It would
be remiss of me to not say now, as a public service announcement, as people are screaming at their podcast listening devices, that the Patriots were terrible against the Denver Broncos, but had only practiced twice in 17 days. So the fact that they were rusty is not surprising.
Great men do not moan about their circumstance. They control their response. But anyway... the Dolphins, I believe, have I think their point differential is only 1 point less than the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, again, you can point to the fact, well, who have they beaten? Yeah, but look how they've beaten them. They've beaten the living piss out of them. It wasn't even, that game against the 49ers wasn't a contest. The Jets was probably the most inept performance by a football team I've ever seen in my life.
Do you want to know something amazing about that, right? Because I agree with you.
Because there was only 2 games, we got to watch it all.
Yeah, the Jets are only 31st in DVOA on offense. Because the Giants are actually worse on offense as per DVOA, which means the Giants must be the worst team in Christendom.
It must be. Because, Matt Harmon, friend of the pod, keeps saying on the Yahoo podcasts, why does Joe Flacco need this money to be playing?
Exactly. No, it's a good point.
Who does he owe money to that badly that he has to be playing this season? Because he doesn't need this type of crap in his life, but he's putting himself through it.
I think sometimes, in a Hannibal A-team style, don't you just love it when a plan comes together? That at the end of the 2018 season, the Miami Dolphins got rid of Adam Gase, got new people in, and said, we're going to stink this year deliberately so we get Tua. They hired a coach who refused to allow them to stink that bad that they could get Tua, and they got Tua anyway. So they got two with the 5th pick. They had a team which had players who they could deal with. They then spent $100 million. They then spent $100 million in the off season on talented players, and now they're in a position where they're 3-3. They have reasonable talent, and they have the franchise quarterback they wanted anyway. Can they win the division? Probably not. Like, I don't think they will. If someone was asking me to put money, as you quite rightly point out, unless something changed since the last time I checked, Bill Belichick's still the coach of the Patriots, so I'll be picking him. But I think this is a division that's 10-6, 9-7 winning. It's not 13-3 winning, and can the Dolphins win another 6 games? Yeah, I think they probably can. So I think they're well within the fight and in the position to try it. But will they do it? I don't think so.
It's a division that in 2 years' time will be fascinating to watch, because I think we could have 3 legitimate teams who'll start every season with a chance of winning it, whereas we've had 20 years of the Patriots will win it.
Yeah. Neil, let's move to the NFC West. Can the Arizona Cardinals win the NFC West?
No. They are a mirage, because as productive as he is as a runner, I am beginning to have worries about Kyler Murray's development as a passer. 9 of 24, or whatever it was he had against Dallas, is not going to cut it. It certainly will cut it against an NFL caliber defense, which he wasn't playing. I mentioned this, on the pod I was on Tuesday with the gentleman, but given the struggles of Baker Mayfield and the struggles of Kyler Murray, when do we start realising that maybe Lincoln Riley just has an excellent scheme and it's not actually about the player?
Hashtag USC quarterbacks, early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is, from a fantasy point of view, like no one wants to hear what you're saying, because Kyler Murray is the only quarterback who has been a QB1 all 6 weeks. I think Russell Wilson, for example, knows he's only played 5. He's only been it 4 times, so that's pretty cool. But as you quite rightly point out, he hasn't been great throwing the ball.
No.
I think sometimes with running quarterbacks, especially, so if we take Baker out of this conversation, go back to Kyler, I think sometimes it's very easy to bail out of a play and start running, and I think that was the Michael Vick issue. I think we saw a lot. If you're old enough to remember that, if you're not, ask your parents. We're talking pre dogfighting Michael Vick in Atlanta. That people were like, oh, he doesn't throw very well, and they were like, well, that's because every time he doesn't get his first read, he just legs it for 50 yards, he's gone. And I think sometimes Kyler's doing a little bit too much of that. His team is weird, because they have a really good win against the 49ers, and they actually boat raced the Dallas Cowboys. I know we don't think it great, far from it, but I don't think many people were picking Arizona plus 28 in that game. So, do I think they can win a division? No, I don't. I still probably think they're the 3rd or 4th best team in the division, but I think it shows the strength of that division that they're 4-2.
Yeah, I think they're of the division contenders, they're the one that if they were to come up against a top tier defense like Tampa Bay or the Steelers or something, they'd get the snot beaten out of them, because a quality defensive coordinator is going to do his best to stop Kyler from running and beat us from the pocket. And at the moment, I don't think he can.
Final division, Neil, is the NFC East, which I actually am unsure. Literally unsure how a team wins this division. I know it sounds a bit weird, but with the exception of playing each other when someone obviously has to win, I don't see how these teams in this division win other games. Like, you go to Philly first and go, Zach Ertz is out 4 to 6 weeks, and Dallas Goedert went on to IR in week 2, I believe, or week 3.
Yeah, week 3.
And I was expecting him to be back this week. And Mike Garofolo saying now that the Eagles are confident to be back by week 10. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? So they've got no players and the defense isn't great. The Dallas Cowboys have got players but don't seem to be able to use them in any way, shape or form. And have managed to I've gone back through time and listened to all the Waxing Lyrical pods of yesteryear, when I used to slag off Mike McCarthy religiously for being a terrible coach who held players back. And oh look, now they're saying this dude hasn't got a clue. So as I pointed out to Matt, I think on Twitter, I assume his year at analytics school didn't go as well as everyone hoped.
Yeah, his analytics credentials were he basically showed them a screenshot of his PFF subscription. Basically, and you know, hats off to Pat Doherty for that joke. And yeah, the one thing in the Eagles' favour, I will say, is that they have nobodies on offense, and Carson Wentz plays his best ball when he has nobodies on offense. And if it should be stated, the Eagles have played the Steelers and the Ravens the last 2 weeks, two of the best defenses in the NFL, and scored 29 and 28 points on them. Not many teams are going to score 29 28 points on those two teams. The problem is, of course, that the defense couldn't stop anyone. So, for now, anyone who thinks Carson Wentz is the problem with the Philadelphia Eagles is not watching the games. They're not paying attention. They're just narrative feeding. So here's what I'm going to do.
But it's well more fun, right?
It's well more fun.
Let's be honest. It's more fun.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you. You can see visually, and you can feed back what I'm going to do if you try and engage me on that subject.
Neil's took his headphones off and threw them at people, and that people being me. I think hopefully he's going to put his headphones back in, otherwise he can't hear me. I think we need to be clear though. Like, I understand what you're saying, but like, he's nowhere near the player that we thought he was going to be 2 years ago. I'm not saying that that's necessarily all his fault. I'm saying that there's major flaws that we didn't know he had that he's got, and we expected that he would grow out of, and he hasn't.
Yeah. The thing is, though, he can play as well as he wants. As long as Nate Gerry is still drawing an NFL salary as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, they're on a hiding to nothing, because he is absolutely terrible. He is one of the worst Eagles players I've ever seen. And despite the fact the Eagles have been quite successful during my time, I've seen some bad ones. He is awful. If there's only one team winning this division, and that's the Eagles, there are three other teams who could somehow win it by everyone else losing it.
There's only two teams who can finish on top of this division, right?
I like the way you've put that.
And that is the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. They're the only two teams who will end up above other teams. Washington and New York cannot do that. It's physically impossible for them to do. I think Washington are trying to lose. I actually have started to get that feeling that they're actually deliberately trying to lose now, which I haven't. Which I'll go private text threads here. I'm all on board for. Like, we've all agreed, and by all of us, I mean the coaching staff, that they don't want Dwayne Haskins because he's got a cold, so he's not allowed anywhere in the building. We've agreed that. Yeah, right. So then you need a new quarterback. That's agreed. The Jets and the Giants are terrible, and they also need new quarterbacks. Giants fans, don't come at me with Daniel Jones. I'm not listening. That experiment's over. Jets fans, the Donald experiment, it's over. So Washington realised they have to be really bad. They can't half-arse this and get 4-12 and get a quarterback. This is 1-15 territory. We need to do this properly.
And even then,
now we've gave the Jets a head start. This is the problem. But what we've done is we've done the sensible thing. We've got beat by the Giants, so we now own the tiebreaker.
Very
Got
clever.
to be thinking this out. Years and years, weeks and weeks. This will be #beat Dallas week. Get that hashtag out of my face. This is all about Andy Dalton. Yeah. Come on, Andy, we need you. This is a week for you. I need Trevor Lawrence in my life, Neil. It needs to happen, and I want it to happen. And I won't let people like Andy Dalton spoil it for me by terrible, terrible play calling.
As we know, I watch a heroic amount of college film. And And my expert eye tells me this about Trevor Lawrence: he needs to cut his hair.
He's got awfully long hair. That is a fact.
I'm getting a distinct Blaine Gabbert vibe from him, and no one wants that.
No one wants a Blaine Gabbert vibe, and I understand what you're saying. The difference between him and Blaine Gabbert would be, the stats and that, which show that he's had more yards, more touchdowns, and less interceptions than the Giants and Jets combined.
It was that episode of The Simpsons where Grandpa Simpson is watching a little-known game called the Super Bowl because, in his words, if people don't watch this, it might never catch on. And the two quarterbacks on display were Johnny Unitas, a man with a haircut you can set your watch to.
Watch by, yeah.
Yeah, and Joe Namath.
Who didn't.
Now, come on now, Trevor. You're not hiding to nothing, let's be honest. Trevor is not one of those names, aside from the great Trevor Brooking. We don't really assign great sporting heroes to that name. But cut your hair. Come on. Get a Lionel Blair cut like mine, and you'll be fine.
I understand what you're saying. Just for those who are unsure what Trevor Lawrence is about, a half time of his game on last Saturday, 22-27 for 391 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, but he should have had. If you're gonna have 5, you may as well have 6. He's obviously a slacker.
He ended with 404 and 7 touchdowns. So there we go. Tank for Trevor. Anyway, that's enough of that. We talk about the NFC East far too much, i.e. once a week. So let's not do it anymore. Let's move on to fancy and let's find out who Neil loves as his fancy darling this week.
Hello, darling.
Well, I love some Justin Jackson for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I know he was a limited participant in practice on Wednesday. I'm hoping that's just a rest and recover thing. But the Chargers are playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are a run sieve. Jackson is likely to be in a bit of a partnership with Joshua Kelly, but over the last 2 weeks, ever since Austin Eckler went down, Jackson has been more efficient, he's had more yards, and he's been more involved in the receiving game as well. So if he's healthy, I want Justin Jackson in as many of my lineups as I can get in regular or DFS.
Hearing rumours of a Minshew benching. Who the balls is the Jaguars' backup QB?
Do you want me to tell you?
I do, because I know you know.
Mike Glennon.
There's a thought process in someone's head that they want to get rid of Gardner Minshew from Mike Glennon because it'll make it better.
Yeah, to open the libs.
That's making Mike Krusty standing on a rake noise. Neil has decided that there's no losers this week. Everyone's a winner, like Oprah in her show. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car.
No, to be fair, we're all losers, especially if you're having to stream tight ends this week. I looked, there are the top 24 tight ends in terms of ownership are all on over 60% of rosters. How are we supposed to stream under these circumstances? It literally goes from like, all 100% all the way down to like 64%, 54%, 46%, 7%. It's literally it's that bad. So we're all losers.
Everyone saw that dude for Houston last week. Fiskin.
Fells.
No,
Ferguson.
Yeah. And go, who the Jesus is he? And he was probably picked up. People were probably bidding hundreds of dollars for him in waiver bids.
I really hope everyone blew their budget, especially as I've just had a notification saying Jonnu Smith returned to full practice today.
Fantastic. Anyway, that's enough on Darling and the loser is tight end. Let's get on with the fantasy team of the week.
Mains and Duts. Daily Fantasy Team of the Week.
Show me the money.
Quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, flex, defense and special teams. Neil, start us off with your quarterback, please.
$5,200, Kyle Allen.
Oh my! You're taking the piss out of me. Why?
Because he's playing Dallas, a defense that does not exist.
Is this because you read Al Goldie's tweet this week? who said that Kyle Allen was clutch and therefore you had to have him in your team.
Clutch. No, this is the fact
by
that
the way, for people who are unaware, Al works for a radio station in Washington. Bet you can't guess who owns the radio station.
No, as I say, he's playing Dallas. It's a decent matchup, and it's because I've got two running backs that were both over 7,000. So Kyle Allen will do.
If I hear a stack on this, there'll be questions.
Oh, get them ready then.
I don't care what Doug Marrone says or DJ Shark. My quarterback now and forever is Gardner Minshew. He's 5,900. He's playing the LA Chargers, and let's be honest, the Chargers love a tight game that they eventually lose, probably with a lot of points. If that's going to be the case, Gardner Minshew will be involved. It also means I get to pick DJ Shark later. Sorry, spoiler alert. Running back 1, Neil. How are you spelling Alvin Kamara versus the Panthers, please?
Well, actually, I've gone with Zeke, too hot to handle Elliott.
What, he's too hot to handle, or the ball as it hits his hands?
The ball would appear to be. Yeah, because I'm banking on positive game script and banking on the fact that he actually made a couple of miraculous plays that Andy Dalton literally waited the last possible minute before you can release a ball before dying to get it out to Zeke. And we saw that he's been involved. There were a few series that he was pulled, especially after I think it was his second fumble. But ultimately, they have to rely on Elliott. They've shown now that we were wrong. The offense is going to drop off between Dalton and Prescott. It's going to happen. So they need to rely on Zeke. So 7,800, I will take him.
Mike, as I know you listen to the show and you're one of our big listeners, can I suggest listening to Wednesday's Ringer NFL show with Warren Sharp, who highlights how offenses should be run in terms of throwing a lot on first and second down. Don't just run it 7 billion times. It's not a very good idea. But anyway, I digress. My running back 1 is the offense in New Orleans. Alvin Kamara, he's playing the Carolina Panthers. He is 7,900. It just goes through him now, especially as it seems that Michael Thomas, instead of punching someone in the face, is injured this week. So with him out, it's Kamara or no one. So yeah, I'm picking Alvin Kamara, 7,900. Running back 2, Neil.
Running back 2, the Green Bay Packers weren't able to get the running game going against the Buccaneers. They will this week. They're playing the Houston Texans. So I've got Aaron Jones, 7,200.
It's almost like you think that because they conceded 700 yards to Derrick Henry that there's a problem with the Houston Texans rush defense.
Where do you stand on Cronell's 2-point try?
Did you watch the Houston Texans on defense?
Yeah.
Win the game?
Yeah.
I.e., they can't score 9.
Yeah. It was one of those, a situation of I'd rather trust Deshaun Watson than my defense, and unfortunately Watson.
Did you watch that game?
I have watched it, yeah.
Did you watch the coin toss in overtime?
Brilliant.
Do you think that Deshaun Watson thought he was getting the effing ball back?
No, I think he'd gone for a
shower.
Romeo,
do you think So don't be giving me no Mike Florio, Chris Sims, some nerd who doesn't know anything about football was in the owner's box telling them. Romy and Cronell went for that because he thought we can't stop these guys and they're just going to score.
Yeah. Once he lost that toss, literally shook his hand, went, got his kit off, had a shower, and he was ready to go by the time the winning touchdown was scored.
A terrible play design of direct snap to Derrick Henry, who then looks at it for a little bit and still was basically untouched going into the end zone. That's how easy the Tennessee Titans scored. Best part of that game is that Mike Vrabel is playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers, by the way, on his deliberate 12 men on the field play.
Epic shithousery. I wonder where he learnt that.
My name is Paul Mannering and I endorse this message. Neil, the Detroit Lions did something really weird last week. They said, see that dude there? Did we give a really high draft pick for him? Yeah, we did. Does that mean he's talented? I think it does, yeah. Should we give him the ball more than 3 times? Let's do that. My running back too is DeAndre Swift. I am stupidly banking on the idea that the Detroit Lions follow a similar path this week and give him multiple touches against the inept Atlanta Falcons. 5,400, DeAndre Swift.
I worry that, he went over 100 yards, scored twice on 14 carries. I worry that he got such a heavy workload because Adrian Peterson wasn't at full health. And I worry that we go back to this being Adrian Peterson's offense. It's 2020, for fuck's sake. But yeah, that's why I worry. I did consider Swift myself, but the rational part, to put Swift in, I think, is to assume rational coaching.
Yeah. There is a fatal flaw in the logic of DeAndre Swift, and that is that Matt Patricia is the head coach. Who's your wide receiver one, Neil?
Well, I'm staying with your game, and for the first time this season, it always brings a special joy to my heart when I can have Kenny Golladay in one of my lineups. So that's what I've done. 6,700. The Falcons surprised everyone last week, but they still gave up an absolute boatload of yards and points after they salted the game out of sight. So I think the Lions are going to put up a bit more of a fight than the Vikings, and we've seen that when Matt Stafford has his binky, good things happen.
My wide receiver one was picked before I found out that he entered the injury report this week. That's AJ Brown. 6,300. Pittsburgh are playing Tennessee playing Pittsburgh. He's really, really good. And his quarterback is also really, really good, and is the card carrying member of the Gase experiment.
We hate Gase.
6,300 gets you AJ Brown.
As I've said, I think it was last week, CeeDee Lamb is the next iteration of DeAndre Hopkins. DK Metcalf is Megatron 2.0. AJ Brown is the new Terrell Owens.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Wide receiver 2, Neil.
Hashtag film grinding. My wide receiver 2, linking up with Kyle Allen, is Mr. Terry McLaurin. He's 5,800. Terry McLaurin is going to have the best season that no one gives a shit about, because he's going to be really good, even though he's taking his first tentative steps in the Larry Fitzgerald career arc.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Andre Johnson. How are you? Hi, my name's Larry Fitzgerald. Hi, I'm Ellie Anquan Bolden. How are you? Yeah, exactly.
Hi, Terry. But I say he's going to have an excellent collection of Costco night shift managers who've thrown him the ball during his career, which I hope lasts for a long time. But ultimately, we do have to remember that the Dallas defense is utter trash. So Terry McLaurin doesn't need big volume to have a big play, but it helps, and he has the ability and capacity to do both here.
My wide receiver 2 is for me, the wide receiver 1 in Cincinnati now, and that's T. Higgins. Doesn't seem to take business decisions like his veteran partner AJ Green when it comes to defending interceptions. He is 5,300, and I think there is the makings of a beautiful friendship between him and Joe Burrow. Wide receiver 3, Neil.
T. Higgins, 5,300.
He's really good, right? I think he's really talented. He looks like a really talented player.
I think he's ideal for what they want. They want that big-bodied bully, and I think he can do that. He's not a burner by any stretch of the imagination. He's not. I don't think he's particularly shifty, but he's the just throw me the ball, I'll catch it. It doesn't matter who's around me, I'm open.
Agreed. My wide receiver 3 is DJ Shark. To stack with Gardner Minshew. He's playing the LA Chargers. He wasn't happy with what was happening last week, and the amount of ball he was getting. Always good to get one of those dudes on your fantasy team the week after when his quarterback forces 15 throws to him. So there we go, DJ Shark, 5,500.
I think if I can just find it now, it's a stat about DJ Shark. As you say, from a target point of view, he had quite a busy week last week. So if I can just find my game logs, obviously I'm still talking, trying to keep this show going because that's the type of considerate character that I am. I say people will be aware of a thing called, unrealised air yards, and this is, the amount of yards through the air that actually don't result in any pass completions. and I can't find it here, so bear with me. We'll move on, and I'll get this found.
Who's your tight end, Neil?
The tight end in the same game is Austin Hooper. Now, the Browns' offense, especially in the passing game, is a tad dysfunctional. Stop me if you've heard that before.
Yes.
But Austin Hooper has been something of a consistent and steadying presence. He's had at least 19% of their targets in the passing game in his last 4 games. He's had 3 games in a row with at least 5 receptions, and the Bengals are really not good at stopping tight ends. In fact, the only tight ends in the last few weeks that haven't gone over 50 yards against them, there's 2 who in their main games had 2 receptions for 22 yards. One of them was former Bengal Tyler Eifert, and the other was Austin Hooper the last time these 2 teams played, but things have changed since then.
Okay, Neil, my tight end is Robert Tonyan. That's like Funyun. Do you know how I know that? Because JJ told me so, Neil.
JJ who?
Zachariason.
Zachariason.
No, but that's Rye, though. He's put Rye. That R-Y-E. He's put that on his tweet.
Yeah, his name is JJ Zachariason.
No, I know it is. No, I know it is because I've spoken to him multiple times. But
and
if you
called
look at
him.
his tweet, it says Rye.
Okay.
As in whiskey and rye. That's what it says. So he's even got that wrong himself.
So the levy was rye, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I've got Robert Tonyan. Who that's his name. It's not Tonyan, it's Tunyon, like Funyun. He told people that, but he's not that bothered. He doesn't want to offend anyone. He's 4,600. He's playing the Houston Texans. If you only watch the first 15 minutes of the Packers Bucks game, you would assume that Robert would have had 15 catches for 170 yards and 3 touchdowns. He didn't, but he could do, because I think Aaron likes him. So at 4,600, that's who I've gone with. Who's your flex, Neil?
My flex is the aforementioned Justin Jackson.
And my flex is Robert Gage for the Atlanta Falcons against the Detroit Lions. I think you're in a situation now that you should always have one of the Atlanta wide receivers in a DraftKings team just in case that they go off into a big game. So that's what I've gone with, and I've gone with Gage because he's the cheapest. He's 4,400.
So last week, say DJ Chark, 14 targets, 7 receptions for 45 yards. He had 193 air yards.
That doesn't even make sense. What does that tell me? That doesn't make sense.
That means he's getting targeted a long way down the field, but unfortunately, the passes are so bad he doesn't catch them.
That's ungood.
Although if you compare it with Juju Smith-Schuster, who last week I think had something like 10 air yards.
Neil, average depth of target on Jimmy Garoppolo passes was minus 4.9. So if you don't think that Kyle Shanahan is protecting Jimmy Garoppolo, I can't help you.
Sorry, here's Juju's. 4 targets, 2 receptions for 6 yards with 13 air yards.
It's time to put that show out of its misery, by the way, the Juju Smith-Schuster experiment.
Yeah.
Hi, Juju. Here's a green tent. Can you just come in here for a second?
Yeah. The first 2 seasons of that show were great, but since then it's really gone downhill. Since the show lost one of its main co-stars, I find.
Yeah. Although his main co-star has been added in 100% of leagues this week. I don't know if it's been happening in leagues you're in, Neil.
I think it's absolutely pathetic that this man who hasn't played, he's played one good game of football in the last 2 years, but just because now he's, not going to be suspended in a couple of weeks, and everyone's just assumed he's going to come in, get signed immediately, and be great. And this is coming from a man who, under no circumstances, went straight to the free agents in the Scott Fish Bowl and added them.
Disgusting. Neil, who's your defence and special teams? It best be the Buffalo Bills.
It's not. It's the Green Bay Packers because they're playing Houston. And I think Houston are going to be chasing, and that opens up more possibilities for sacks. And ultimately, sacks is what we want. Sacks isn't what we always get, but sacks is what we want.
For those who are unaware, Joe Flacco had a sack that cost the New York Jets 26 yards last week. I
2
have the
yards
Buffalo Bills, and for anyone who doesn't, I don't understand why.
Yeah, 2 yards short of tying the longest sack in NFL history. Can you tell me who the player was who took that longest sack?
I can't.
It was Tim Tebow for the Denver Broncos in their playoff loss at New England, and it was on 4th down, and it was with like
I think
about
I
a
actually
minute
remember
left.
the play. I think I actually now you bring it up, Neil. I actually think I remember the play. The interesting thing that you've done there is give me a sack, and then told me that it was done against someone who wasn't a quarterback. So that's interesting. So Joe Flacco was definitely a quarterback. So therefore, his now by definition is the longest, as Tim Tebow wasn't.
Okay.
He was a. I'm going to offend people now. He was a God-loving mofo, who was basically a
Fullback.
Fullback. Yeah. If you don't like it, go and watch college footy.
What was the stat I saw? Was it 15 years ago? 11% of quarterbacks in the NFL were left-handed. Now, there is one left-handed quarterback in the NFL.
Can you remember the last left-handed player to throw a touchdown in the NFL? Prior to Tua doing that?
The last left-handed player was Mr. Jarvis Landry against the Dallas Cowboys, who were actually, the ironic thing there is, the Dallas Cowboys' offensive coordinator was the last left-handed quarterback to start an NFL game.
And he was also the last left-handed quarterback to throw a touchdown pass, Mr. Kellen Moore.
And my God, if you ever call any quarterback a noodle arm, you've not watched Kellen Moore play.
He was fantastic for Boise State, but yeah, that play weren't going to last in the NFL. Okay, Neil, let's.
The winningest quarterback in NCAA history, I believe.
He was at one point, yeah, but that's because of Boise State. You can stay for 15 years. I don't really know how, but you can. It's like BYU. They've got some kind of rule where you can just. This guy's 27 and still playing in college. Why? How does this work?
He loves that bluegrass.
He loves that bluegrass in Boise, Idaho, yeah. Neil, let's recap. Quarterback.
Kyle Allen.
I'm going to laugh every time you say it. Gardner Minshew, running back 1.
Zeke.
I've got Alvin Kamara, running back 2.
The best Aaron in Green Bay.
Ooh, I've got DeAndre Swift. Wide receiver 1.
Baby Tron.
I've got Baby T.O. Wide receiver 2.
Teddy Mack.
I've got T. Higgins. I can't believe you have 2 Washington players in your team and you played Dallas. Wide receiver 3.
He suits me to a T2, T. Higgins.
I've got DJ Shark. Tight end.
Hooperman.
I've got Mr. Funyon, Robert Tunyon.
That sounds like a Viz character, I'm sorry.
That's why I thought he will just be known as Funyon forever now. May as well just call him Funyon. Done. Who's your flex, Neil?
Just Jacks.
I've got Gage. Sounds like a wrestler. And then defense and special teams.
The Green Bay Packers.
I've got the Buffalo Bills. Neil, that is week 7 preview in the books. Before Sunday, where can people catch you?
Find me on the Twitter at @N13. Usual stuff out in the usual places. Done a few bits for Ravenswire this week. They're on their bye, the Ravens, but it hasn't stopped me. So I've got that out. I've got the tight end report at Rotoviz. I've got me Super Bowl betting odds tracker at Numberfire. Follow me on the Twitter. And I think I was on my game last Sunday with my humorous tweets during the game. I was on form. But don't forget, the games start at 5 o'clock this week.
Yeah, do not forget, they do start at 5 o'clock, which is not good. Or is good, depending on where you're having Sunday lunch. I am at Main7. Combine me at Waxing_Lyrical. Enjoy week 7, people. We will, as Neil said, don't forget, early start this week. But that means much more of the later games before you have to go to bed. So, good news. These top guys are out.